Hello 7th graders. This video is a review of multiplying decimals. Before we get started, make sure that you turn to a brand new page in your math notebook and title the page Multiplying Decimals Review. In this video we're going to do a few review problems and refresh your memory on how do we multiply decimals. Some things to think about when we are multiplying decimals is we want to make sure that we line up the numbers in our multiplication problem. This is different than when we add or subtract decimals because we were lining up the decimal, not the numbers, when we add or subtract. When we're multiplying, we want to line up the numbers, not the decimal place. Okay, so then once we get our numbers lined up, we can multiply just like normal, and then the number of places behind the decimal in our initial problem is the total number of decimal places that we will have behind our decimal in our answer. Okay? Make sure you don't use a calculator and you show all your work when you are working through these problems. Let's start with an example here. 4.4 times 2.727. Alright, the first thing that we want to do when we see a problem written horizontally like this is we want to rewrite the problem vertically. So I've done that over here. Now you might notice that 2.72 is on top over here, and it's the second number over here. The commutative property of multiplication says that the order in which you multiply does not change our product. So for me, I like to have the bigger number, or the one with more numbers on top, and the one with less numbers on the bottom. And then once we get our problem rewritten, we need to make sure we take note of how many numbers are behind the decimal in our problem. And in 2.727 we have 3 numbers behind the decimal, and in our second 4.4 we have 1 number behind the decimal. That means that in our answer we need to add these numbers up, which is 4. So our answer is going to have 4 numbers behind the decimal place. Okay. Now once you make sense of that, you can just multiply like normal. You can keep the decimals in your problem or you can remove them. Either way, it doesn't matter, as long as you remember and take note of how many places are behind the decimal. Alright, so now we can multiply. We get 4 times 7 is 28, so we'll put the 8 down, carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. The 0, carry the 1. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 1 is 29. Carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. Alright, now we need to put a 0 here because we're moving over in place value. And we got 4 times 7 is 28. So we carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. Oops, that's a 1. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 1 is 29. Carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. Okay, now we've done our multiplication, and now we can add just like normal. So we have 8 plus 0 is 8. 0 plus 8 is 8. 9 plus 0 is 9. 0 plus 9 is 9. 1 plus 0 is 1. And then we have 1 over here by itself, or 1. Alright, now we have our answer, and now we need to figure out where does the decimal go in our answer. Okay, and if we look back up here, we have 4 numbers behind the decimal in our original problem. So that means our decimal needs to have 4 numbers behind it. Okay, so if we start on the right side and count back 4 to the left, we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. And our answer is 11.9988. Okay, something that I would always recommend that you do when you are done with your multiplying and you have your answer is to look back at the problem and see if your answer makes sense. So we have 2.7, which we can round to 3, and we have 4, which we can round to 4. And if we do 3 times 4, we get 12, and our answer is 11.9988. So that answer makes sense. It is reasonable. Alright, pause here. Make sure you have these notes written down before you move on and try some examples on your own. Alright, now it's your turn. So make sure you do these problems on your own and then come back and see how you did. First one, 8.7 times 4.9. And this problem I'm going to remove the decimals, but I'm going to make note that there are two numbers behind the decimal. So that means in our answer there's going to be two numbers behind the decimal. And then I'm going to just multiply the whole numbers, 87 times 49. Okay, and then we're just going to do the math. 9 times 7 is 63. Put the 3, carry the 6. 9 times 8 is 72. Plus 6 is 78. Okay, 4 times 8 is 28. Oops, we need to put our 0. And then 4 times 8 is 28. 2, carry the, put the 8, carry the 2. 8 times 4 is 32. Plus 2 is 34. Okay, now we've got our multiplication done, and we can add. 3 plus 0 is 3. 8 plus 8 is 16. Put the 6, carry the 1. We have 8 plus 4 is 12. 3, or put the 2, carry the 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. Alright, now we have our numbers, and then we need to figure out where does our decimal go. And if we look back up here, we have two numbers behind the decimal, so that means in our answer, we're going to have two numbers behind the decimal. Okay, so if we start on the right and move to the left, we go 1, 2, and our answer is 42 and 63 hundredths. Okay, again, we can look into our problem and make sure our answer makes sense. If we round 8.7 to 9, and we round 4.9 to 5, and we multiply 9 times 5, our answer would be 45. And so our answer is 42 and 63 hundredths. So that answer is reasonable. It makes sense. Okay, B. We have a little bit. There's a lot of numbers here. It looks complicated, but let's see how it works. If we do the same thing that we did in A, and we don't worry about the decimals, but we take note that there are 3 and 3 behind numbers behind the decimal, so that would be 6 numbers. Okay, so we got to remember that for our answer. And then we can just multiply the whole number, 152 times 8. 8 times 2 is 16. Put the 6, carry the 1. 8 times 5 is 40, plus 1 is 41. Put the 1, carry the 4. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 4 is 12. Okay, now if we look at our answer now, and we look back up at the decimal places, we need to have 6 numbers behind the decimal. Okay, so in a situation like this, many times we would want to just put the zeros on the right side. But if we're counting back, we need to start from the right and move to the left. So we would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And our decimal would go here. So that means we need to add 2 zeros here. So now our answer is 0.00126. Okay, how'd you do on that one? Maybe those zeros confused you, maybe not. But hopefully you can remember that you can remove the decimals and just multiply the whole number, and then add those decimals or add those zeros back in by knowing that we need 6 numbers behind the decimal. All right, we got a couple more problems. Go ahead and pause, try these on your own, and come back and see how you did. All right, we got 0.53 times 2.1. So I'm going to rewrite this. 2.1 times 0.53. I'm going to actually change that. Like I said earlier, the commutative property of multiplication says it doesn't matter the order. So I'm going to put, we'll put 53 times 21. and we're paying close attention that behind the decimal we have 3 numbers. So that'll be important for our answer. Now we can multiply. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 5 is 5. Put the 0 and multiply again. 2 times 3 is 6. And 2 times 5 is 10. Now we can add. 3 plus 0 is 3. 5 plus 6 is 11. Carry the 1. 1 plus 0 is 1. And 1 by itself is 1. Alright, now we have our answer, but we need to figure out, where does our decimal go? And in our problem, there's 3 numbers behind the decimal, so our decimal is going to make sure in our answer that there are 3 numbers behind the decimal. So if we start on the right, count to the left 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Our answer is 1.13. And if we look back and we do rounding, we can say this answer is 0.53 times 2, or 0.5, 1/2 times 2, and 1/2 of 2 is 1, so our answer is 1.13, so our answer is reasonable. Alright, last one, 4 times 1.25. Again, I'm going to take the decimal out, so I'm just going to multiply 1. I'm going to multiply 125 times 4. Okay. And then we need to make sure that we pay attention to how many numbers are behind the decimal. Okay. In our problem, there are two numbers behind the decimal. So if we multiply now, 4 times 5 is 20. Carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8. Plus 2 is 10. Carry the 1. 4 times 1 is 4. Plus 1 is 5. Alright, now where does our decimal go? We have 2 numbers behind the decimal, so in our answer we need to start from the right, count back twice. So we go 1, 2. Our answer is 5. Does that make sense? 4 times 1.25. If we say, if we have 4 copies of 125, that would mean that if we think of that as dollars, we would have $4, and then we'd have 4 quarters, so that would equal $5. So 5 is accurate. Alright, hopefully you did well on these problems and you are remembering how to multiply decimals.